the mass automatically divides the arrows into smaller and smaller ones. Mass closest time. Is there a situation where the axis of the magnetic poles is perpendicular to the axis of the geometric poles at the planet's rotation center? In the case of the Earth, the magnetic axis is slightly shifted with respect to the axis of rotation. How many cores of mass densities determine, in fact, the center of rotation of the planet as a point, and what is the component that ultimately determines the axis of rotation? Is the charge read from the surface of the mass? What is the induced smallest distance between molecules as to the charge, that we can talk about two passing masses? Are physicists getting water on the equator? And here comes the guide Virgo and shows the equator. Because our galaxy lies in the constellation Virgo, it is a line to which someone has attached a brass plate and symbolically sliced the Earth into two hemispheres, geoidal bowls. Well, and if someone took a plate, would it be possible to quickly define the equator line? Yes. He convinces Virgo and with his hand points out the small swirls of dust appearing here and there on the dusty Earth. Maybe they are materializations of witches, or are they ghosts of characters whirling with duration? Those whirlwinds that spin clockwise are in the northern hemisphere. And those vortices that turn the other way round indicate the southern hemisphere. This is Virgo. To the physicist's surprise, the vortex passing through the equator line suddenly changed its spin direction before their eyes. But the Virgo continues, waving her hand at their surprise that anyone can repeat this experiment as many times as he wishes, shaking the water in the bottle and watching the vortex change of direction as it carries it back and forth across the equatorial line. The same applies to a drainage bathtub, except that it is more difficult to carry across the equator. Yeah. And now what physics will explain this phenomenon? And why does it take place in closed bathrooms even at the poles of the planet? Does the geographic equator coincide with the vortex equator, and both of them coincide with the magnetic equator? Why not? Why so? But here physicists put water in their mouths to see if it spins left or right in their bodies. And are the inhabitants of the Antipodes made of right-handed proteins? At this point, the Virgo gives everyone a certificate of crossing the equator. And he asks, will the blood stop circulating in us when we stand astride the equator? Let's think, one leg on the north and the other on the south canopy? What about our half-brains in the head? In one leg the wildebeest is fawning and in the other the bat makes its direction spin. Well, why does honey break up when it is transferred to a foreign hemisphere? The young lady is smiling goodbye to tourists, and I notice in her purse a spool of kite line and 2 lipsticks. Midnight and afternoon. It is clear why the plants following the sun are twisted along its path. But why the underground roots are twisted as if they have negative geotropism, nobody knows. I dare not ask the mate of the equatorial guide dealing with zephyrs with another group of tourists who nervously shake the bottles of water and walk in circles on the Earth, trodden over the moment by the thought of immortals. 20 minutes later they will forget about it when buying another roll of film or sending a postcard overseas. Our galaxy, our Milky Way, lies in the constellation of Virgo. Tourists lie in fold-out seats in an air-conditioned coach. The physicists are completely lying. The flow or vibrations of molecules, their momentary approach and departure from each other, causes the production of induced instantaneous charges, and thus also instantaneous currents and magnetic fields. The conclusions are self-imposed. And the answers become as clear as the sun. The 3 coaxial wheels rush in one direction. I do not consider whether in a gravitational field or not, or in a different field. Current direction. Horizontal and vertical are not the same as Earth's magnetic fields. That is, the compass needle does not hang horizontally, I understand. It does not follow the direction of a wooden spirit level with a bubble of air in the water, but it sets according to the latitude and longitude at a certain angle sticking into the ground, and shows the direction of the field lines, forces, magnetic. Conclusion: gravitational force and force directly from the Earth's magnetic field are not the same thing. Logarithmic damping decrement, lambda, is it the exciter of the vibration grid in objects? Through this excitation, does mass become action, so not mass but action, mass in statu nascendi? No.